Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. How to practice Dalai Lama. Part 6. Aspiring to enlightenment. Compassion is the key to achieving a deeper level of morality, yet how can we help others when we ourselves are beset by wrong attitudes? Without being in a better position ourselves, it is difficult for us to help others on the large scale we have been discussing. For example, if you are going to help people who are illiterate, you have to be educated. Similarly, to help so many sentient beings we must achieve Buddhahood, since a Buddha has all the qualities necessary to help them: knowledge of all the techniques for spiritual development and clairvoyant knowledge of their emotions, interests, dispositions, and so forth. When you are moved through the practice of compassion to feel concern for others, it is time for new values to take root. We prepare the ground of our mind for these new values by engaging in the ritual for aspiring to enlightenment. You are already equipped with the basic qualities needed to attain complete enlightenment, the luminous and cognitive nature of your mind. Therefore, focus on the thought, "I will attain unsurpassed perfect enlightenment," for the sake of sentient beings throughout limitless space. Nurture this intention until it is strong. The ritual for aspiring to altruistic enlightenment is very helpful in this process. 7 meritorious practices. This ritual, which should become part of your daily meditation, begins with 7 steps followed by a special offering. These practices increase your force of merit, which in turn leads you more surely to transformation. Through these forms of devotion you will intensify your commitment to compassion. As you see below, they all involve paying devotion to those special beings who teach compassion. 1. Imagine Shakyamuni Buddha surrounded by innumerable bodhisattvas filling the sky in front of you, and pay homage with your body, speech, and mind. Put your palms together and feel intensely that you are respectfully taking refuge in the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Say out loud, "Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha and the Bodhisattvas." 2. Spread out offerings, such as fruit or incense. Imagine everything that might be suitable to be offered whether you own it or not, including your body, your resources, and your own virtue. Then imagine offering these in their entirety to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. 3. We have all been responsible for countless ill deeds of body, speech, and mind motivated by the desire to do harm. In the spirit of full disclosure, develop a sense of regret for having done them, as if through those actions you had eaten poison. Generate 2. An intention to abstain from these actions in the future, as if toto otherwise might cost you your life. Think, "From the bottom of my heart, I disclose to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas the ill deeds that I have done." The main way to purify bad deeds is through regret. The greater your regret, the stronger your intention not to repeat them in the future. 4. From the depths of your heart admire your own virtuous actions and those of others. Take joy in the good things you have done in this lifetime. Focus on specific good deeds such as giving to a charity. The fact that you have a human body in this lifetime and the opportunity to practice altruism is evidence of virtuous actions in past lives. So take joy in those virtues too, and think to yourself, "I really did something good." Also take joy in the virtues of others, whether you have seen them firsthand or not. Take joy in the innumerable virtues of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas over limitless time. By delighting in your own virtues and those of others, you will keep from regretting your own virtuous deeds, wishing you had not given to a charity because it caused your bank account to dwindle, for example, and you will also avoid becoming jealous of the good deeds of others or competitive with them. 5. Ask the Buddhas who have become completely enlightened but have not yet engaged in teaching spiritual doctrine to do so on behalf of all who suffer. 6. Pray to the Buddhas not to pass away. This is a specific request for Buddhas who have taught and are nearing the time to pass away. 7. Rather than directing your practice of the previous steps toward temporary happiness and comfort in this lifetime or the next, or to merely becoming liberated from cyclic existence, dedicated toward attaining highest enlightenment, think, may these acts help me attain full and perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Then imagine that the entire world system has been purified and offer it with all conceivable marvels to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This special offering nourishes compassion by offering all things desirable to those who teach it, committing total. Now you are ready for the actual ritual of aspiring to enlightenment for the care of others. It comes in 2 parts, the first of which is the recitation of a short statement of refuge. Until I reach enlightenment, I seek refuge in Buddha, the doctrine, and the supreme spiritual community. In its most compassionate form, refuge is the union of 3 attitudes: concern for the state of suffering of all beings, not just for yourself. Concern 2, that they not seek mere solitary relief from suffering, but aspire to the altruistic enlightenment of Buddhahood. Faith in the Buddha, the states of realization, and the spiritual community, maintaining the conviction that through them all beings will find freedom from all suffering. Compassion, which means not being able to stand the enslavement of others to suffering without doing something about it. Know that the Buddha is the teacher of refuge, that the true paths and true cessations are the actual refuge, and that the Bodhisattvas who have directly realized the true nature of phenomena are our spiritual community, leading all sentient beings to refuge. With that knowledge, aspire to highest enlightenment by reciting, through the collections of merit of my giving, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all beings. As you do, think to yourself, through the force of these, may I achieve Buddhahood not to help myself, but to be of service to all sentient beings, in order to help them reach Buddhahood. This is called generation of a compassionate intention, to become enlightened in the form of a wish. This brings us to the central part of the ritual. With a strong wish to attain Buddhahood, in order to serve other beings, imagine before you a Buddha or your own spiritual teacher as a representative of him. Recite the following, as if you were repeating it after the Buddha: until I reach enlightenment, I seek refuge in Buddha, the doctrine, and the supreme spiritual community. Through the collections of merit of my giving, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all beings. By saying this, you are directing your virtuous actions, not to some small purpose in this life or the next, but to the greatest purpose of all, the attainment of total freedom for all beings. Generate this attitude with great determination. Make the second repetition with even stronger resolve to make this altruistic goal a constant in your day-to-day life. Until I reach enlightenment, I seek refuge in Buddha, the doctrine, and the supreme spiritual community. Through the collections of merit of my giving, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all beings. Make the third repetition with even greater determination from the depths of your heart. Make a lasting, fully reasoned decision unshakably circumstance that the welfare of so many others is far greater than your own. Think, now when I have such a great opportunity, what could be more important than striving for the benefit of others? From now on, to the full extent of my ability, I will stop concentrating on my own welfare and will commit myself deeply to the advancement of all beings. To accomplish this, I will achieve unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. Recite, until I reach enlightenment, I seek refuge in Buddha, the doctrine, and the supreme spiritual community. Through the collections of merit of my giving, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all beings. This concludes the ritual. Through it you plant and nurture the seeds of strong and unwavering compassion, maintaining commitment into this lifetime. There are 4 practices aimed at keeping this altruism from deteriorating in this lifetime. First, increase your enthusiasm for becoming enlightened for the sake of others by recalling again and again the benefits of doing so. Then, increase your concern for others by dividing the day and night into 3 periods each, and during those periods, take a little time from your day, or rouse yourself from sleep, to practice the 5-step visualization given on page 84, even for just 5 minutes. This practice is very effective. It becomes a regular habit, like eating food at a certain time. If you cannot do this so often, visualize the steps 3 times in one morning session that lasts around 15 minutes, and do the same at night. Ponder the meaning of your aim. May I attain highest enlightenment for others. The next practice requires vigilance. In seeking to gain highest enlightenment for the sake of all beings, make sure not to mentally neglect the welfare of even one. Try to accumulate the 2 forces of merit and wisdom as much as possible. To increase merit, engage willingly in virtuous activities like generosity and morality. To accumulate wisdom, you must come to understand the true way phenomena exist. Since this is a complicated topic, we will be exploring it at length in chapters 8-10. Suffice it to say here that it is helpful to reflect on how phenomena arise and exist dependent on causes and conditions. Maintaining commitment in future lifetimes. In future lifetimes, your compassionate intention to become enlightened could weaken. You can prevent this from happening by abandoning the 4 unwholesome activities listed below and by training in the 4 wholesome practices that follow them. 4 unwholesome practices. Deceiving a high person such as an abbot, ordination master, lama, or fellow practitioner about negative things that you have done. Causing others engaged in virtue to regret what they are doing. Criticizing or belittling those who express compassion for others. Deceit and misrepresentation to get others' services. 4 wholesome practices. Do not lie to anyone at all. There are exceptions when lying can result in great benefit to others, but they are rare. Help others move toward the altruistic enlightenment of Buddhahood, directly or indirectly. Consider and treat bodhisattvas with the same respect as Buddha. Since we do not know who is and who is not a bodhisattva, we must treat all beings with respect. As a general rule, place others above you. Never cheat anyone and always remain honest. If you have the resolve to train in these practices to generate a determination to achieve Buddhahood for others, then make this promise: I will maintain my determination and never give it up. Those who cannot maintain this level of training can forego the promise and instead can think, may I attain highest enlightenment for the sake of all beings. People who are not Buddhists, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and so forth can generate another concerned attitude of equal value by thinking, I will bring about help and happiness for all beings. Practical intention to become enlightened. When your aspiration to become enlightened is firm, you should implement it in deeds. These are called bodhisattva deeds, and principal among them are the 6 perfections: donating material things such as money, clothing, and food, giving love, giving the teachings of spiritual doctrines and practices, giving relief from fearful situations to all beings including animals, help even an ant out of a puddle. Morality, which refers mainly to the altruistic attitude and behavior of bodhisattvas, patience which is exhibited in stressful situations, or used to sustain difficult endeavors, such as learning teachings and practicing over a long period, effort which maintains enthusiasm for virtue and assists all the other perfections, concentration which is the practice of stable and intense meditation explained in the next chapter, wisdom which is necessary for understanding the nature of cyclic existence and impermanence, as well as dependent arising and emptiness, The 6 perfections, in turn, can be condensed into the 3 trainings of bodhisattvas: training in the perfection of morality, which includes the perfections of giving and patience, training in the perfection of concentration, and training in the perfection of wisdom. The perfection of effort is required for all 3 trainings. This is how the 6 perfections are included in the threefold practice of morality, concentrated meditation, and wisdom that is the focus of this book. When you arrive at the feeling in the depths of your heart that you must engage in bodhisattva deeds thesaubing the 6 perfections, or, seen another way, the threefold practice, this is the appropriate time to take the bodhisattva vows of the practical intention to become enlightened. In essence, all beings are united by the desire to gain happiness and avoid suffering. We are also the same, in that it is possible to remove suffering and attain happiness, to which we all have an equal right. Then what is the difference between you and all others? You are a minority of one. It is easy to see that the vast number of sentient beings hoping for happiness and seeking an end to suffering are more important than any one person. It is therefore eminently reasonable for you to commit yourself to the welfare of innumerable others, to use your body, speech, and mind for their good, and to abandon an attitude of just taking care of yourself. Summary for daily practice. First, take the 7 preliminary steps. Pay homage to Shakyamuni Buddha surrounded by innumerable bodhisattvas, whom you imagine filling the sky before you. Offer wonderful things whether you own them or not, including your body, your resources, and your own virtue, to the Buddhas and bodhisattvas. Disclose of countless ill deeds of body, speech, and mind you have perpetrated with an intent to harm others. Regret having done them and resolve to abstain from them in the future. Admire from the depths of the heart your own virtues and those of others. Take joy in the good things you have done in this and previous lives, thinking, I have done something good. Take joy in the virtues of others, including those of Buddhas and bodhisattvas. Entreath Buddhas who have become completely enlightened, but have not yet taught, to teach for the sake of those who suffer. Supplicate to the Buddhas not to pass away. Dedicate these 6 practices to attaining highest enlightenment. Then undertake the central part of the ritual for aspiring to enlightenment, with a strong determination to attain Buddhahood. In order to serve other beings, imagine a Buddha in front of you, or your spiritual teacher as a representative of Buddha. Recite 3 times, as if you are repeating after him or her, until I reach enlightenment I seek refuge in Buddha, the doctrine, and the supreme spiritual community. Through the collections of merit of my giving morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all beings. To maintain and strengthen this profound altruism in this life, perform the following. Recall again and again the benefits of developing an intention to become enlightened for the sake of others. Divide the day into 3 periods and the night into 3 periods, and during each of those periods, take a little time out or rouse yourself from sleep and practice the 5-step visualization given in the last chapter. It is also sufficient to visualize the 5 steps 3 times in one morning session that lasts around 15 minutes and 3 times in one night session for 15 minutes. Avoid mentally neglecting the welfare of even one being. As much as possible, engage in virtuous activity with a good attitude and develop a rough understanding of the nature of reality, or maintain a wish to do so and work at it. To maintain and strengthen this profound altruism in future lives, do not lie to anyone at all, unless you can help others greatly through lying. Directly or indirectly help people to progress toward enlightenment. Treat all beings with respect, never cheat anyone, and always remain honest. In essence, think again and again, may I become able to help all beings. Part 7. Focusing the mind. Let us take a moment to review how progress toward a meaningful life unfolds. First comes morality, then concentrated meditation, then wisdom. Wisdom relies on the single-mindedness of meditation, and meditation depends upon the self-awareness of morality. In the last 5 chapters we have discussed the practice of morality, which makes you more settled and peaceful in your mind, ready for more spiritual advancement. With a conscious mode of behavior, concentrated meditation, called calm abiding, can be accomplished. Still, your mind is too scattered for increasingly effective meditative practice, which requires full concentration. Even a small noise here or there can immediately distract you. Since it is absolutely necessary to make the mind much more focused so that wisdom can take hold, I will discuss in this chapter the process of developing the profoundly concentrated state of calm abiding. First, I will briefly describe the various types of meditation so that you can understand the place that calm abiding takes among them. Types of meditation. There are many ways to meditate. 2 basic types of meditation are analytical meditation and stabilizing meditation. In analytical meditation, you analyze a topic trying to understand it through reasoning. For instance, you might meditate on why things are impermanent by reflecting on how they are produced by causes or how they disintegrate moment by moment. In stabilizing meditation, you fix your mind on a single object or topic, such as impermanence. Calm abiding is cultivated through stabilizing meditation. Another way of dividing meditation is between subjective meditation and objective meditation. In subjective meditation, your aim is to cultivate in the mind a new or strengthened perspective or attitude. The cultivation of faith is an example of this type of meditation. Faith is not the object on which you are concentrating, but an attitude that is being meditatively cultivated. Cultivation of compassion is subjective meditation because you are not meditating on compassion, but seeking to make your consciousness more compassionate. In objective meditation, you meditate on a topic, such as on impermanence, or an object, such as on the golden body of a Buddha. You can meditate in the manner of wishing. For example, you might wish to be filled with the compassion and wisdom of a Buddha. Or, you can go one step further into imaginative meditation, in which you envision that you have qualities that you actually do not yet have. The practice of deity yoga, for example, calls for meditating on yourself as an ideal being whose body is made from the light of wisdom. Of these various forms of meditation, let us discuss how to practice the stabilizing meditation of calm abiding. As mentioned above, the aim of stabilizing meditation is to strengthen the mind's ability to focus on a single object or topic, which in turn enables the mind to overcome problems at their root. It will also help you to be more alert and sharp in daily life. It will gradually increase your power of memory, which is useful in all parts of your life. Achieving calm abiding. Since in this type of meditation you are seeking to achieve a deeply concentrated state of mind, you need the following. The initial cause, morality, which brings you a peaceful, relaxed, conscientious mode of behavior, and thus removes coarse distractions. A time and place for practice apart from the commotion of daily life. Make time for meditation in your daily schedule. For focused meditation, being alone in a secluded, quiet spot is crucial. Since noise is the thorn preventing concentration, at the beginning it is very important to stay in a quiet place. Consider taking a retreat for your vacation. A suitability at fostering clarity of mind. For some health conditions, it may be necessary to eat meat, but, generally speaking, vegetarian food is best. According to the morality of individual liberation, there is no prohibition against eating meat on occasion, but you should not eat meat that is purposely killed for you, and you should not ask for it if it is not offered. Indeed, it would be most welcome if the majority of people did become vegetarian. Some great vehicle scriptures prohibit the eating of meat, since concern for others is the heart of great vehicle morality. Also, eating too much food is not good, so eat less. Of course, drinking alcohol is out of the question, as are all mind-altering drugs. Smoking is not advisable. If a bearded man was smoking while entering into deep meditation, he would risk having his beard catch on fire. The right amount of sleep too much makes your mind dull, and too little can be disruptive. You have to figure out what the right amount is for you. Physical posture is critical to focused meditation, especially at this early stage. If possible, assume the fuller half lotus position. Use 2 cushions, putting a smaller one under your rear so that your rear is higher than your knees, the effect being that, no matter how much you meditate, you will not be as likely to become tired. Straighten your backbone like an arrow, bend your head just a little downward, aim your eyes over the nose to the front, put your tongue against the roof of the mouth, leave your lips and teeth as usual, and leave your arms a little loose, not forcing them against the body. With regard to positioning the hands, Japanese Zen practitioners usually put the left hand, palm up, on top of the right, which is also palm up. Tibetans put the right hand, palm up, on top of the left, which is also palm up. In tantric practice, it is important to put the right hand on top of the left, with both palms up, and with the 2 thumbs pressed together in the form of a triangle, the base of which is about 4 finger widths below the navel. The object of meditation. There are many possible objects of the stabilizing meditation for achieving calm abiding, the breath. Some texts speak of watching the inhalation and exhalation of breath through thenis, but do not address the topic of how deep to breathe. Other texts explain how to imagine the movement of breath in specific areas in the body. In one type of breathing exercise, you pull up the lower airs, or energies, and press down the upper energies, holding them as if in a vessel just below the navel. Your body, feelings, mind, or phenomena such as impermanence. These meditations are called establishments through mindfulness. The first letter of your name on a disc of light outside or inside your body. In Thailand, practitioners often meditate within applying mindfulness to whatever they do. While walking, they are mindful of putting the right foot forward, then the left, then the right. In general, a good object of meditation for a Buddhist is an image of the body of Shakyamuni Buddha. For a Christian, it could be an image of Jesus. Gaze at it so that it appears to your mind internally when you close your eyes. Meditate on the figure at eye level, not too high or low, at a distance of about 4 or 5 feet. At the beginning, it is difficult to get the object of meditation to appear clearly in your mind. To avoid dulling your perception, try frequent, intense 5-minute sessions rather than long meditations. 4 to 16 of these brief sessions daily is ideal. When it finally appears internally, you have found your object of meditation. Now fix your mind continuously upon it, counteracting excitement and laxity. To achieve calm abiding, both stability and clarity are needed with respect to the object of meditation. Thus, the biggest obstacles to sustained meditation are excitement and laxity. Excitement prevents stability. When the mind does not stay on the object but becomes distracted or scattered, the object of meditation is lost. There is also a subtle form of excitement where, even if the object is not lost, a corner of the mind is thinking about something else. You need to identify excitement and, through mindfulness, not let your mind come under its influence. Lethargy, a heaviness of mind and body, is an obstacle to clarity. Lethargy also causes laxity, which prevents clarity. In coarse laxity, the mind sinks, the object of meditation fades and is lost. In subtle laxity, the object is not lost, but the clarity of the object and of the mind diminish a little, because the mind's intensity has weakened. The mind is a little too loose. The mind might stay quite clearly on the object of meditation, but without true alertness. This state is often mistaken for proper meditation. When your mind is too intense and you experience excitement, you need to loosen it, like loosening the strings of a guitar a bit. Similarly, when you have laxity, your mind is not intense enough, so you need to increase its intensity by making it a little more taut, like tightening the strings. As you see, the mind needs to be tuned like a fine-stringed instrument. Mindfulness and introspection. The force behind developing concentrated meditation is mindfulness, which is the ability to stay with an object, not allowing distraction. You exercise mindfulness by putting your mind back on its object of meditation every time it falters, which will happen again and again. When you become skilled in maintaining mindfulness on the object, you need to use introspection. Asantitavasa Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life says, the special function of introspection is periodically to inspect your activities, whether physical or mental. In the process of developing calm abiding, the task of introspection is to determine whether the mind has come, or is about to come, under the influence of laxity or excitement. At the start, periods of laxity and excitement are strong, but, with effort, these become weaker and less frequent, and the periods of being able to stay on the object lengthen. Gradually, even subtle laxity and excitement lose their force and disappear. Ultimately, the ability of the mind to stay one-pointedly on the object, free from the faults of excitement and laxity, increases. When through mindfulness and introspection you can sustain the continuum of holding the object, it is possible to achieve concentrated meditation within 6 months. Initially, you must forcibly put your mind on the object of meditation with great exertion, then from time to time you engage the object without great exertion, then you engage it in a relaxed way continuously, and finally you spontaneously stay on the object without needing to make any effort to remove excitement and laxity. If you are able to remain on your object for hours vividly and continuously, you have achieved firm stability. Unfavorable states of body and mind are gone, and a bliss of physical and mental pliancy is attained. At that point, you have achieved calm abiding. Qualities of calm abiding. To be endowed with calm abiding, the mind must have thestability to hold fast to one object, but this alone is not sufficient. The mind must also be clear, but this too is not enough. Its clarity should be intense, alert and sure. The mind cannot be even a little dull. These fine adjustments to the mind to make it susceptible to calm abiding are not easily accomplished. In Dharamsala, India, one of the Tibetans practicing concentrated meditation told me that the cultivation of one-pointed concentration was worse than imprisonment in a Chinese jail. Because it is difficult, it is important to prepare carefully, moving from step to step. Do not push yourself too hard, especially at first, otherwise you run the risk of becoming upset or even having a nervous breakdown. The goal here is daily practice, where you choose an object of meditation, and as you focus on it, try to achieve and maintain stability, clarity, and intensity, concentrating on the mind itself. Calm abiding can also be achieved through daily meditations on the mind itself. One of the advantages of observing the mind now is that it will strengthen your ability to manifest a mind of clear light as you are dying. First, identify the mind's essential nature of luminosity and knowing, unsullied by thought, and then concentrate on it. This is one among many levels of thoughtlessness. I will describe meditation on the ultimate nature of the mind in Chapter 10. To prepare for concentrating on the mind itself, you need to overcome emotional obstacles by engaging in the accumulation of positive merit, such as through developing compassion as discussed earlier. The next step is to become familiar with the nature of your own mind. The best time for this is early in the morning, just after waking up, but before all your sense faculties have become active. Your eyes are not yet open. Look at, or within, consciousness itself. This is a good opportunity to experience the clear light nature of the mind. Do not let your mind think on what has happened in the past, nor let it chase after things that might happen in the future. Rather, leave the mind vivid, without any constructions, just as it is. In the space between old and new ideas, discover the natural, unfabricated, luminous and knowing nature of the mind unaffected by thought. When you remain this way, you understand that the mind is like a mirror, reflecting any object, any conception, and that the mind has a nature of mere luminosity and knowing, of mere experience. After you recognize the nature of the mind as luminosity and knowing, stay with it. Using your powers of mindfulness and introspection, remain in that state. If a thought comes, just look into its very nature, and the concept will lose its power and dissolve of its own accord. Sometimes, with exertion, you can prevent a thought from fully forming. More likely, though, when you reach this state of recognizing the basic, unaffected, unfabricated nature of the mind, thoughts will dissolve as they form, and even when they do come, they will not be powerful. Know that just as the waves of the ocean are made of water, thoughts are made of the luminous, knowing nature of the mind. And through continual daily practice, thoughts will weaken and disappear without any other exertion. This practice of meditation itself sharpens your mind and improves your memory, qualities that are certainly useful beyond spiritual practice, whether in business engineering, raising a family, or being a teacher, doctor, or lawyer. This practice also helps on a daily basis with anger. When you get irritated, you can concentrate on the nature of the anger itself and thereby undermine its force. Another benefit of such mental training emerges from the close connection between body and mind. When you are young and physically fit, your mind is powerful. It is particularly valuable to begin training then, so that as you age, your mind stays fresh and positive through the body's changes. After all, the human brain is a special endowment, and it would be a pity to let it weaken through neglect, surrendering its powers to age until, animal-like, its only job is to take care of the body. For practitioners, early mental training, and especially concentration on the mind, is important preparation for the final day, when your mind must remain clear and sharp to make use of special techniques during the stages of death, or at least to influence rebirth into the next life. Dullness of mind at this critical point can be very dangerous. A real guarantee for a good rebirth is to be able to conduct your practice during the stages of dying. Your state of mind just before rebirth is influential in determining the character of your next life. You may have accumulated great merit in your life, but if you live it with a dull mind, you jeopardize the form that your next life will take. On the other hand, even if you committed some regrettable deeds in your lifetime, when the final day comes, if you are prepared and determined to use that occasion to the fullest, your next rebirth will definitely be good. Therefore, strive to train the mind to be fresh, alert, and sharp. Author techniques for achieving mentalcom. In difficult situations, it is easy to become emotionally worked up. Buddhism offers many techniques for relieving stress and finding calm in the trying situations we face every day. These techniques vary according to the situation and the person. It is particularly effective to use the power of analytical meditation to address problems directly, rather than trying to avoid them. Here are some examples of this technique. When you are confronted with trouble, do whatever you can to overcome it, but if it is insurmountable, then reflect on the fact that this trouble is due to your own actions in this or a previous life. Understanding that suffering comes from karma will bring some peace as it reveals that life is not unjust. Otherwise, sorrow and pain might seem to be meaningless. Initially, a problem can seem solid and intractable until you investigate its true nature. To do this, work at understanding the range of suffering in your own life. Ordinary mind and body have a nature of suffering, just as it is the nature of fire to be hot and burning. In the same way we have learned how to work with the nature of fire, we can learn how to work with suffering in our lives. Consider trouble from a broader perspective. If someone accuses you, rather than lashing out, imagine that this accusation loosens the chains of your own self-cherishing and thereby enhances your ability to care for others. Reframe bad circumstances as forces assisting your spiritual development. This technique is difficult to implement, but very powerful when you succeed. When you are jealous or wish harm on an enemy, instead of stewing over that person's bad qualities, reflect on his or her attributes. Most people are a mixture of good and bad qualities. It is hard to find anyone who is bad in all respects. Reflect on the emptiness of inherent existence. This is the deepest analytical meditation, and something I will explore in the next 3 chapters. Or, you can use stabilizing meditation for a temporary rest. If you cannot stop worrying over something in the past or what might happen in the future, shift your focus to the inhalation and exhalation of your breath. Or recite this mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, pronounced Om Mani Padme Hum. Since the mind cannot concentrate on 2 things simultaneously, either of these meditations causes the former worry to fade. It seems to me that all religions could benefit from Buddhist meditation techniques. Single-minded concentration could be applied usefully in many situations. In all walks of life, we can benefit from focusing the mind and increasing memory. Summary for daily practice. Choose an object of meditation and focus your mind on it, trying to achieve and maintain stability, clarity, and intensity. Avoid laxity and excitement. Alternatively, identify the fundamental state of the mind, unsullied by thought, in its own state, mere luminosity, the knowing nature of the mind. With mindfulness and introspection, remain in that state. If a thought arises, just look into the very nature of that thought. This will cause it to lose its power and dissolve of its own accord. Part 8. Examining how beings and things exist. Overview of wisdom in spiritual practice. To generate the type of love and compassion that motivates you to seek Buddhahood, not for yourself, but for the sake of others, first you must confront suffering by identifying its types. This is the first noble truth. From the time we are born to the time we die, we suffer mental and physical pain, the suffering of change, and pervasive suffering of uncontrolled conditioning. The second and third noble truths lead us to understand the causes of suffering and whether or not those causes can be removed. The fundamental cause of suffering is ignorance, the mistaken apprehension that living beings and objects inherently exist. This chapter will show that beings and objects, in fact, do not exist this way. We all have a valid, proper sense of self, or I, but then we additionally have a misconception of that I as inherently existing. Under the sway of this delusion, we view the self as existing under its own power, established by way of its own nature, able to set itself up. This sense of inherent existence can even be so strong that the self feels independent from mind and body. For instance, if you are weak from sickness, you might feel that you could switch bodies with someone who is stronger. Similarly, when your mind is dull, you might feel that you could switch your mind with someone else's sharp mind. However, if there were such a separate I self established and existing in its own right, it should become clearer and clearer under the light of competent analysis as to whether it exists as either mind or body, or the collection of mind and body, or different from mind and body. In fact, the closer you look, the more it is not found. This turns out to be the case for everything, for all phenomena. The fact that you cannot find them means that those phenomena do not exist under their own power. They are not self-established. Sometime during the early 60s, when I was reflecting on a passage by Tsongkhapa about unfindability and the fact that phenomena are dependent on conceptuality, it was as if lightning coursed within my chest. Here is the passage. A coiled rope, speckled color and coiling are similar to those of a snake, and when the rope is perceived in a dim area, the thought arises, this is a snake. As for the rope, at that time when it is seen to be a snake, the collection and parts of the rope are not even in the slightest way a snake. Therefore, that snake is merely set up by conceptuality. In the same way, when the thought I arises in dependence upon mind and body, nothing within mind and body, neither the collection which is a continuum of earlier and later moments, nor the collection of the parts at one time, nor the separate parts, nor the continuum of any of the separate parts is in even the slightest way the I. Also, there is not even the slightest something that is a different entity from mind and body that is apprehendable as the I. Consequently, the I is morally set up by conceptuality in dependence upon mind and body. It is not established by way of its own entity. The impact lasted for a while, and for the next few weeks whenever I saw people, they seemed like a magician's illusions, in that they appeared to inherently exist, but I knew that they actually did not. That experience, which was like lightning in my heart, was most likely at a level below completely valid and incontrovertible realization. This is when my understanding of the cessation of the afflictive emotions as a true possibility became real. Nowadays I always meditate on emptiness in the morning and bring that experience into the day's activities. Just thinking or saying I, as in I will do such and such, will often trigger the feeling. But still I cannot claim full understanding of emptiness. A consciousness that conceives of inherent existence does not have a valid foundation. A wise consciousness, grounded in reality, understands that living beings and other phenomena, minds, bodies, buildings, and so forth, do not inherently exist. This is the wisdom of emptiness. Understanding reality exactly opposite to the misconception of inherent existence, wisdom gradually overcomes ignorance. Remove the ignorance that misconceives phenomena to inherently exist, and you prevent the generation of afflictive emotions like lust and hatred. Thus, in turn, suffering can also be removed. In addition, the wisdom of emptiness must be accompanied by a motivation of deep concern for others and by the compassionate deeds it inspires before it can remove the obstructions to omniscience, which are the predispositions for the false appearance of phenomena even to sense consciousness as if they inherently exist. Therefore, full spiritual practice calls for cultivating wisdom in conjunction with great compassionate intention to become enlightened, in which others are valued more than yourself. Only then may your consciousness be transformed into the omniscience of a Buddha, selflessness. Both Buddhists and non-Buddhists practice meditation to achieve pleasure and get rid of pain, and in both Buddhist and non-Buddhist systems the self is a central object of scrutiny. Certain non-Buddhists who accept rebirth accept the transitory nature of mind and body, but they believe in a self that is permanent, changeless, and unitary. Although Buddhist schools accept rebirth, they hold that there is no such solid self. For Buddhists, the main topic of the training in wisdom is emptiness, or selflessness, which means the absence of a permanent, unitary, and independent self, or, more subtly, the absence of inherent existence either in living beings or in other phenomena. Two truths. To understand selflessness, you need to understand that everything that exists is contained in two groups called the two truths, conventional and ultimate. The phenomena that we see and observe around us can go from good to bad, or bad to good, depending on various causes and conditions. Many phenomena cannot be said to be inherently good or bad. They are better or worse, tall or short, beautiful or ugly, only by comparison, not by way of their own nature. Their value is relative. From this you can see that there is a discrepancy between the way things appear and how they actually are. For instance, something may in terms of how it appears look good, but due to its inner nature being different, it can turn bad once it is affected by conditions. Food that looks so good in a restaurant may not sit so well in your stomach. This is a clear sign of a discrepancy between appearance and reality. These phenomena themselves are called conventional truths. They are known by consciousness that goes no further than appearances. But the same objects have an inner mode of being, called an ultimate truth, that allows for the changes brought about by conditions. A wise consciousness, not satisfied with mere appearances, analyzes to find whether objects inherently exist as they seem to do, but discovers their absence of inherent existence. It finds an emptiness of inherent existence beyond appearances. Empty of what? Emptiness, or selflessness, can only be understood if we first identify that of which phenomena are empty. Without understanding what is negated, you cannot understand its absence, emptiness. You might think that emptiness means nothingness, but it does not. Merely from reading it is difficult to identify and understand the object of negation. What Buddhist texts speak of as true establishment or inherent existence. But over a period of time, when you add your own investigations to the reading, the faultiness of our usual way of seeing things will become clearer and clearer. Buddha said many times that because all phenomena are dependently arisen, they are relative, their existence depends on other causes and conditions, and depends on their own parts. A wooden table, for instance, does not exist independently. Rather, it depends on a great many causes such as a tree, the carpenter who makes it, and so forth. It also depends upon its own parts. If a wooden table or any phenomenon really were not dependent, if it were established in its own right, then when you analyze it, its existence in its own right should become more obvious, but it does not. This Buddhist reasoning is supported by science. Physicists today keep discovering finer and finer components of matter, yet they still cannot understand its ultimate nature. Understanding emptiness is even deeper. The more you look into how an ignorant consciousness conceives phenomena to exist, the more you find that phenomena do not exist that way. However, the more you look into what a wise consciousness understands, the more you gain affirmation in the absence of inherent existence. Lust and hatred are ruled by ignorance, and so cannot be generated limitlessly. Do objects exist? Since, as we have established, when any phenomenon is sought through analysis, it cannot be found, you may be wondering whether these phenomena exist at all. However, we know from direct experience that people and things cause pleasure and pain, and that they can help and harm. Therefore, phenomena certainly do exist. The question is they do not exist in their own right, but only have an existence dependent upon many factors, including a consciousness that conceptualizes them. Once they exist, but do not exist on their own, they necessarily exist in dependence upon conceptualization. However, when phenomena appear to us, they do not at all appear as if they exist this way. Rather, they seem to be established in their own right, from the object's side, without depending upon a conceptualizing consciousness. When training to develop wisdom, you are seeking through analysis to find the inherent existence of whatever object you are considering yourself, another person, your body, your mind, or anything else. You are analyzing not the mere appearance, but the inherent nature of the object. Thus it is not that you come to understand that the object does not exist, rather, you find that its inherent existence is unfounded. Analysis does not contradict the mere existence of the object. Phenomena do indeed exist, but not in the way we think they do. What is left after analysis is a dependently existent phenomenon. When, for example, you examine your own body, its inherent existence is negated, but what is left is a body dependent on four limbs, a trunk, and a head. If phenomena are empty, can they function? Whenever we think about objects, do we mistakenly believe that they exist in their own right? No. We can conceive of phenomena in three different ways. Let us consider a tree. There is no denying that it appears to inherently exist, but we could conceive of the tree as existing inherently, in its own right. We could conceive of the tree as lacking inherent existence. We could conceive of the tree without thinking that it inherently exists or not. Only the first of those is wrong. The other two modes of apprehension are right, even if the mode of appearance is mistaken in the second and the third, in that the tree appears as if inherently existent. If objects do not inherently exist, does this mean that they cannot function? Jumping to the conclusion that because the true nature of objects is emptiness, they are therefore incapable of performing functions such as causing pleasure or pain, or helping or harming, is the worst sort of misunderstanding, a nihilistic view. As the Indian scholar Yogi Nagarjuna says in his Prashasgarland, a nihilist will certainly have a bad transmigration upon rebirth, whereas a person who believes, albeit wrongly, an inherent existence goes on to a good transmigration. Allow me to explain. You need a belief in the consequences of actions to choose virtue in your life and discard non-virtue. For the time being, the subtle view of the emptiness of inherent existence might be too difficult for you to understand without falling into the trap of nihilism, where you are unable to understand that phenomena arise in dependence on causes and conditions, dependent arising. For the sake of your spiritual progress, it would be better for now to set aside trying to penetrate emptiness. Even if you mistakenly believe that phenomena inherently exist, you can still develop an understanding of dependent arising and apply it in practice. This is why even Buddha, on occasion, taught that living beings and other phenomena inherently exist. Such teachings are the thought of Buddha scriptures, but they are not the soundfinal thought. For specific purposes, he sometimes spoke in non-final ways. In what way is consciousness mistaken? Because all phenomena appear to exist in their own right, all of our ordinary perceptions are mistaken. Only when emptiness is directly realized during completely focused meditation is there no false appearance. At that time, the dualism of subject and object has vanished, as has the appearance of multiplicity. Only emptiness appears. After you rise from that meditation, once again living beings and objects falsely appear to exist in and of themselves, but through the power of having realized emptiness, you will recognize the discrepancy between appearance and reality. Through meditation you have identified both the false mode of appearance and the false mode of apprehension. Let us return to the central point. All of us have a sense of I, but we need to realize that it is only designated in dependence upon mind and body. The selflessness that Buddhists speak of refers to the absence of a self that is permanent, heartless, and independent, or, more subtly, it can refer to the absence of inherent existence of any phenomenon. However, Buddhists do value the existence of a self that changes from moment to moment, designated in dependence upon the continuum of mind and body. All of us validly have this sense of I. When Buddhists speak of the doctrine of selflessness, we are not referring to the non-existence of this self. With this I, all of us rightfully want happiness and do not want suffering. It is when we exaggerate our sense of ourselves and other phenomena to mean something inherently existent that we get drawn into many problems. Summary for daily practice. As an exercise in identifying how objects and beings falsely appear, try the following. Observe how an item such as a watch appears in a store when you first notice it, then how its appearance changes and becomes even more concrete as you become more interested in it, and finally how it appears after you have bought it and consider it yours. Reflect on how you yourself appear to your mind, as if inherently existent. Then reflect on how others and their bodies appear to your mind. Part 9. The Middle Way. Need for both concentration and wisdom. Buddhist texts tell us that upon realizing emptiness, the illusion of inherent existence weakens, but this is unlikely after a single, brief realization. If you have not attained one-pointed concentration, calm abiding of the mind, you cannot use mere understanding of emptiness to uproot the illusion of inherent existence. Rather, you need to engage in analysis again and again. Through concentrated meditation, your mind will become strong, deep, stable, and capable of one-pointed concentration on emptiness, which gradually works to diminish grosser levels of the misperception of reality. This is the reason why Buddha's sutras as well as the 3 lower tantras all say that calm abiding, concentrated meditation, is a prerequisite for special insight, wisdom. The stabilizing meditation used in calm abiding and the analytical meditation used in special insight are not differentiated by the objects of meditation. Both could have either emptiness or conventional phenomena as their focus. The difference is that observing emptiness from a state of calm abiding requires physical and mental suppleness induced through stabilizing meditation on emptiness, whereas special insight observing emptiness additionally involves physical and mental suppleness induced by analytical meditation with respect to emptiness. That degree of suppleness can only be gained after attaining the easier level of suppleness produced by stabilizing meditation. Therefore, you need to achieve calm abiding before special insight. Although calm abiding could be achieved through taking emptiness as its object, this is only for practitioners who have already understood emptiness. Usually, however, practitioners first achieve one-pointed meditation and then gain the view of emptiness through reason analysis. Need for reasoning. All Buddhist schools agree that the analytical reasoning process which leads to an inference, a conceptual realization, derives from basic, shared, direct perception. As an example, let us consider the following reasoning. A plant does not inherently exist because of being a dependent arising. You begin by reflecting on the fact that a plant is a dependent arising because its production depends on certain causes and conditions, such as a seed, soil, sunlight, and water. But eventually the reasoning process must be supported by direct perception, or it cannot stand. We can see with our eyes that plants change, they grow, mature, and finally dry up. In this sense, inference is blind, since it must eventually rely on direct perception. Inference depends on reasoning, which in turn rests on basic, shared, indisputable experience through direct perception. Noble objects can be divided into the obvious, the slightly obscure, and the very obscure. In order to understand a very obscure topic, it is necessary to rely on scripture, but even for this type of inference it is not sufficient just to cite one scripture as validation for another. You must analyze whether there are any internal contradictions among scriptures on that topic. There is any contradiction between what the scripture says about that topic and what is evident in direct perception. There is any contradiction between what the scripture says about that topic and what can be understood through basic inference, derived by reasoning. So even in these very obscure cases based on scripture, analysis is needed. Buddha set out 4 steps for establishing reliability. Do not rely on just the person, but rely on the doctrine. With respect to the doctrine, do not rely on just the words, but rely on the meaning. With respect to the meaning, do not rely on just meaning requiring interpretation, but rely on meaning that is definitive. With respect to the definitive meaning, do not rely on just dualistic understanding, but rely on the wisdom of direct perception of the truth. Buddha also said, like gold, upon being scorched, cut, and rubbed, my word is to be adopted by monastics and scholars upon analyzing it well, not out of respect for me. In the process of reasoning, it is very effective to state absurd consequences of wrong views in order to overcome the potency of that wrong idea and then make a proof statement. When I was studying logic as a youth, a scholar once told me that, both in debate with a Buddhist who asserts inherent existence and in your own analytical meditation, it is a rather soft approach to use a syllogistic statement such as my body is without inherent existence because it is a dependent arising. However, it has more impact to use an absurd consequence such as it follows that my body could not be adependent arising because it inherently exists, because it is fundamental to Buddhism that all phenomena are dependent arisings, compatibility of dependent arising and emptiness. Buddha himself, in setting forth sutras, and Nagarjuna and his spiritual sons Aryadeva, Vedapalita, and Chandrakirti in commenting on the meaning of those sutras, used the fact that phenomena are dependent arisings as Thefanalrasan for establishing emptiness. This indicates that phenomena in general are not non-existent and that impermanent phenomena are fit to perform functions. When Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, first he identified true sufferings, sources, cessations and paths, and then said, sufferings are to be recognized, but there is nothing to be recognized. The sources of suffering are to be abandoned, but there is nothing to be abandoned. Cessation is to be actualized, but there is nothing to be actualized. The path is to be meditated, but there is nothing to be meditated. The meaning of this is that, although there are factors among the Four Noble Truths to be conventionally and validly recognized, abandoned, actualized, and meditated, there is nothing to be ultimately recognized, abandoned, actualized, and meditated. From the viewpoint of ultimate reality, all of these are beyond activity. Everything has the same taste in the emptiness of inherent existence. In this way, Buddha set out the perspectives of the two truths, conventional and ultimate. All phenomena, causes and effects, actions and agents, good and bad, and so forth merely conventionally exist, only nominally exist. They are dependent arisings. Because phenomena depend upon other factors for their existence, they are not independent. This absence of independence or emptiness of inherent existence is their own ultimate truth. You will come to comprehend this true emptiness of inherent existence when you become dissatisfied with mere appearances and you use analysis to probe beneath the surface. When you thoroughly understand appearance and emptiness, you will also understand that they are in harmony with one another. Appearance does not preclude emptiness, and emptiness does not preclude appearance. Failing to understand this, you might believe in virtue, non-virtue, cause and effect, and so forth, but then be unable to believe in emptiness. Similarly, you might think that you understand emptiness, but then be unable to believe in the facts of cause and effect, help or harm, pleasure or pain that arise dependent upon conditions. Without proper understanding, emptiness and appearance seem to prohibit each other. However, phenomena are empty of inherent existence because they depend for their existence on other conditions. And conversely, phenomena are capable of functioning because they are empty of the solidity of inherent existence. If phenomena were not empty of inherent existence, if they did exist by their own power, then they could not be affected by other causes and conditions. They would not change. In that case, they would not cause pleasure and pain, help and harm. good and bad would be impossible. Full realization of dependent arising brings with it the double understanding of appearance and emptiness of inherent existence. The extremes of utter non-existence and inherent existence are simultaneously cleared away by this twin understanding. Knowing that phenomena arise prevents believing in the extreme of nihilism by allowing objects and beings to function in this world, allowing for the cause and effect of karma. Knowing that phenomena are dependent also prevents believing in the extreme of inherent existence by eliminating that phenomena exist in their own right. Through understanding these two truths, you arrive at the middle way. The Heart Sutra. What is the relationship between objects and their emptiness? This profound topic is addressed in a scripture on the perfection of wisdom, called the Heart Sutra, which is recited and meditated daily throughout great vehicle Buddhist countries such as China, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, Tibet, and Vietnam. It is a short and pithy presentation by Buddha about the wisdom required to overcome problems at their roots, and in conjunction with another directed motivation and compassionate deeds to attain the omniscience of a Buddha. Here is the Heart Sutra in its entirety, homage to the supramundane victorious perfection of wisdom. This is what I have heard. At one time, the supramundane victor was residing together with a great community of monastics and a great community of bodhisattvas on Vulture Mountain in Rahagriha. At that time, the supramundane victor was absorbed in the concentrated meditation of the enumerations of phenomena called perception of the profound. At that time the bodhisattva great being, the superior Avalokiteshvara, also was observing the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and was viewing even these five aggregates forms, feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, and consciousnesses as empty of inherent existence. Then, through the Buddha's power, the Venerable Shariputra said to the Bodhisattva great being, the superior Avalokiteshvara, how should a child of good lineage who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom train? The Bodhisattva great being, the superior Avalokiteshvara, replied to Shariputra, Shariputra, sons or daughters of good lineage who wish to practice the profound perfection of wisdom should view phenomena as follows. They should correctly and thoroughly view even these five aggregates as empty of inherent existence. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness. Similarly, feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, and consciousnesses are empty. Shariputra, in that way all phenomena are empty without characteristics, not produced, not ceasing, not defiled, not separated from defilements, not decreasing, not increasing. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there are no forms, no feeling, no discriminations, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no forms, no sounds, no odors, no tastes, no tangible objects, no other phenomena. In emptiness there is no I constituent through to no mental constituent, and through to no mental consciousness constituent. In emptiness there is no ignorance, and no extinguishment of ignorance through to no extinguishment of aging and death. Similarly, in emptiness there are no sufferings, sources, cessations, and paths, no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since bodhisattvas, the great beings, have no attainment, they rely on and reside in this profound perfection of wisdom. Their minds are without obstruction and without fear, having thoroughly passed beyond error, they go to the finality of nirvana. Even all the Buddhas in the past, present, and future become manifestly and completely awakened into unsurpassed, complete perfect enlightenment, in reliance on this profound perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra thoroughly pacifying all suffering. It should be known that since it is not false, it is true. To state the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, Tadyata gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha. It is thus, proceed beyond, thoroughly proceed beyond, be founded in enlightenment. In that way, Shariputra, bodhisattva great beings should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then, the supramundane victor rose from that concentrated meditation and said to the bodhisattva great being, the superior of Avalokiteshvara, good, child of good lineage, it is so. It is so. In just a way that you have indicated, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced. Even the ones gone thus admire this. The supramundane victor having pronounced this, the venerable Shariputra, the bodhisattva great being of Avalokiteshvara, all those in the surrounding retinue, and the worldly beings including gods, humans, demigods, and aroma eaters admired this and praised what the supramundane victor said, form and emptiness. Drawing from a long tradition of Indian and Tibetan commentaries on Theheart Sutra, I will offer some food for thought on its central passage. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. This pithy statement contains much meaning. All persons and things are dependent upon their causes and upon their parts, and cannot exist independently of them. They are dependent arisings, consequently they are empty of inherent existence. Because all phenomena are dependent arisings, they have a nature of emptiness. Conversely, as beings and things have no independent or inherent nature, they must rely on other factors. They must be dependent arisings. The emptiness of forms is not separate from forms. Forms themselves, which are produced and disintegrate due to the presence of conditions, are by their own nature empty of inherent existence. This absence of inherent existence is their final reality, their mode of abiding, their final mode of being. In sum, the production and disintegration, increase and decrease, and so forth of forms are possible because forms are empty of self-powered existence. Phenomena such as forms are said to dawn from within the sphere of the nature of emptiness. Consequently, Theheart Sutra says, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. In this way, emptiness and dependent arising are shown to be in harmony. In brief, forms are not empty because of emptiness, forms themselves are empty. Emptiness means not that a phenomenon is empty of being some other object, but that it itself is empty of its own inherent existence. That a form is emptiness means that the final nature of a form is its natural lack of inherent existence. Because forms are dependent arisings, they are empty of an independent self-powered entity. That emptiness is form means that this natural lack of inherent existence, which is the absence of a self-powered principle, makes possible the forms which are its sport, or which are established from it in dependence upon conditions. Since forms are the basis of emptiness, emptiness is form. Forms appear as like reflections of emptiness. In my own experience, it is easier to understand that, because things are dependent arisings, they are empty of inherent existence, than it is to understand that, because things are empty, they must be dependent arisings. Although intellectually I know the latter very well, experience on the level of feeling is more difficult. Nowadays I often reflect on a statement in Nagarjuna's precious garland, a person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, and not all of them. What person is there other than these? First he considers whether the physical elements of the body, earth, hard things, water, fluids, fire, heat, wind, air, and space, the empty spaces such as the gullet, could be the self. Next he examines consciousness. Then he considers whether the collection of all of these could be the self. Finally, he rhetorically asks whether the self could be other than these. In none of these ways can the self be found. Then Nagarjuna does not immediately draw the conclusion that the self is not real. Rather, right after that stanza, he says that the self is not non-existent but is a dependent arising which is set up dependent upon those 6 constituents named above. Then, based on this fact of dependence, he draws the conclusion that the self is not real. Due to being set up in dependence upon a composite of 6 constituents, a person is not real. Here, not real doesn't just mean that the self cannot be found when sought from among or separate from the 6 constituents. Nagarjuna is making the point that although the mind realizing the emptiness of inherent existence sees a mere absence, that very mind promotes an understanding that the self is a dependent arising. I feel that the way he presents this is full of impact, avoiding both the extreme of holding that the self inherently exists and the extreme of holding that the self does not exist at all. Like the 2 sides of the hand, when looked at one way, by examining its deeper nature, there is the emptiness of inherent existence, but when looked at from the other side, there is the appearance of the phenomenon itself. They are one entity. Therefore, form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. You have to be able to understand that the import of emptiness is also the meaning of dependent arising. They are deeply connected. As your insight into emptiness grows clearer, you will see more and more that objects depend on causes and conditions, and on their parts, and they bring about pleasure and pain because they do not exist inherently. If you come to feel that everything is useless because it is empty, you are mistaking emptiness for nihilism. Properly understanding emptiness means realizing how we must rely on cause and effect. The natural and full understanding of emptiness means a profound understanding of the union of appearance and emptiness. The understanding of emptiness is fantastic, is it not? It can serve as an antidote to the misconception of inherent existence, and yet in itself it also assists in greater understanding of cause and effect. That is real understanding of emptiness. It is impossible to explain the import of the realization of emptiness in the context of just hearing or reading an explanation. It is something that has to be worked at over a long period of time together with the practices of morality, refraining from harm, and extending compassion, and through making supplications to Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other teachers for help in overcoming obstacles. We need many positive causes. Summary for daily practice. Frequently reflect on how phenomena arise in dependence on causes and conditions, and try to see how this opposes the way persons and things appear to be so solidly existent, to exist in their own right, to exist inherently. If you tend toward nihilism, reflect more on dependent arising. If, by concentrating on causes and conditions, you tend to reinforce the inherent existence of phenomena, then put more emphasis on how dependence contradicts this so solid appearance. You will probably be pulled from one side to the other. The true middle way takes time to find. Part 10. Mind and the deep nature of mind. In a scripture on perfect wisdom, Buddha makes the following profound statement: "In the mind is not to be found. The nature of the mind is clear light." To understand the levels of meaning in this statement, you have to identify what the mind is, analyze its deeper nature, and investigate how good and bad effects come about. Let us examine the various parts of the statement. The phrase "in the mind" is concerned with what mind is, its luminous and knowing nature. In Chapter 7, on concentrated meditation, we talked about the luminous and knowing nature of the mind and how, although it exists throughout every moment of mind, it is necessary to set aside previous thoughts and not begin new ones in order to identify it. When Buddha says the mind is not to be found, this indicates that luminosity and knowing nature are not the mind's deepest and final nature. Rather, the ultimate nature of the mind is clear light, its emptiness of inherent existence. You might think Buddha is saying that the mind does not exist, but this is not the case. I, as the explainer, am explaining this statement through the workings of my own mind, and you, the reader, are reading by the workings of your mind. We are always using the mind, and it is always right with us, but we do not know it well. Thus, even though it is difficult to identify the mind, it exists and is being analyzed as to whether it is its own deep nature. It is clear that the mind exists, but since it is not established as its own final nature and basic disposition, what is its mode of being? Its deep nature is a mere emptiness of its own inherent existence. This means that the faulty defilements that pollute the mind, such as ignorance, lust, and hatred, are temporary and therefore separable from the mind. Once these defilements are understood to be superficial and not in the mind's basic nature, we see that the deep nature of the mind is clear light, emptiness. Defilements are a superficial nature of them and is clear light. Buddhist texts explain in different ways the statement, defilements are superficial, the nature of the mind is clear light. Still, this is not a matter of Buddha's saying something so vague that it could be interpreted in any way one wishes. Rather, it has many different explicit and implicit meanings. In highest Yoga Tantra there are many ways of drawing meaning out of an abstruse statement. One can explain its literal meaning, its general meaning, its hidden meaning, and its final meaning. To clarify Buddha's statement, defilements are superficial, the nature of the mind is clear light. In combination with Tantra, I will cite the magical Oratantrach as a section and the repetition of the names of Manjushri Tantra. The perfect Buddhas arise from Ace, the supreme of letters. From among the four meanings listed above, I will give a general explanation of this statement. The letter Ace, a negative particle in Sanskrit. It indicates emptiness, which is the absence or negation of inherent existence. When the magical array Tantra says that the perfect Buddhas arise from, this means that the Buddhas dawn from within the nominal sphere of emptiness, or, put another way, the Buddhas dawn from meditating on the emptiness of inherent existence. Through meditation, defilements are extinguished in the nominal sphere of reality, the emptiness of inherent existence. Emptiness, symbolized by is the supreme topic, and therefore the magical array Tantra says Ace, the supreme of letters. Also, from the viewpoint of highest Yoga Tantra, the letter A refers to the indestructible drop within which a Buddha body is achieved. In highest Yoga Tantra, Buddhahood arises by concentratedly focusing on the indestructible drop at the heart center. The final body of a Buddha has the nature of the indestructible drop. This adds to our understanding of the statement that the perfect Buddhas arise from the Latera. What is the indestructible drop? It is the union of the very subtle wind and the very subtle mind. Mind knows objects, whereas wind, or inner energy, causes consciousness to engage objects. Since this is the case, with a union of wind and mind there are changes in consciousness. In English mind, consciousness is non-physical. It does not have a color or shape, or the obstructive quality of physical things. Its entity is mere luminosity and cognition, and when it meets with certain conditions, such as when an object is present and a sense faculty is functioning properly, it reflects that object. That the mind changes from moment to moment and appears in different aspects indicates that the mind operates under the other influence of causes and conditions. A mind arises in dependence upon a former mind of similar type, which requires that there has been an earlier beginningless continuum of mind. If the production of a mind did not need to depend upon former moments of mind, but could just be produced causelessly, then a mind could be produced anywhere and any time, which is absurd. Similarly, If consciousness was not produced as a continuation of a form or entity of consciousness, and instead were produced from something physical, either it would always, absurdly, be produced or it would never be produced, which is also absurd. This indicates that consciousness is a continuation of a form or entity of consciousness. Because consciousness is based in a form or moment of consciousness, there can be no beginning to its continuum. There is no beginning of consciousness, and there is no end to it. This continuum makes possible the transformation of the mind into improved states. When the mental continuum is associated with impure states, our experience is limited to the realm of cyclic existence. When the mental continuum breaks free from impure states, we can achieve nirvana. In this way, all phenomena are the artifice, or sport, of the mind. The impure phenomena of cyclic existence are the sport of impure mind. The pure phenomena of nirvana are the sport of pure mind. Falta states of mandepandupan ignorance. Since it is said that in the mind is not to be found. The nature of the mind is clear light. Impure states of mind such as desire and hatred are not part of the nature of mind and must be produced by ignorance, a consciousness misconceiving inherent existence either in the present moment or from an earlier source. All faulty states of mind have mistaken consciousness as their root. Ignorance is a form of consciousness that is mistaken with respect to the object of its attention. It is wrong about it. It has no valid cognition as its root. A mistaken awareness and an awareness with a valid foundation have contradictory ways of apprehending phenomena, so the one harms the other. When, in your practice, you become accustomed to correct attitudes, faulty states of mind naturally diminish until finally they are extinguished. The very system of the Buddhist teaching is based on natural contradiction. We want happiness and do not want suffering. The pain we seek to avoid mainly stems from mental attitudes, and since the source of mental suffering is afflictive emotions either directly or indirectly, we have to consider whether there are any forces opposing them. If, for instance, anger causes suffering, then we must find a contradictory force. For anger it is love and compassion. Although anger and love-compassion are all consciousnesses, they have contradictory ways of apprehending the same object. Their realizations are opposites. Similarly, if a room is too hot, there is no way to reduce the heat but to introduce cold. Just as heat and cold oppose each other, so too do opposing mental states, pure and impure. To the extent you develop one, the other decreases. Therefore, it is possible to remove faulty states of mind. Antidotes exist. Union of the conventional and the ultimate. The mind itself is a conventional truth. The reality of the mind, its emptiness of inherent existence, is its ultimate truth. These two truths are contained in one indivisible entity. Just as there is a union of the two truths, conventional and ultimate, with respect to the mind, so there is a union of the two truths with respect to each and every object. Its appearance is a conventional truth, and its emptiness of inherent existence is its ultimate truth. Final reality is known through the reasoning of dependent arising. For instance, because the mind is a dependently arisen entity, the mind is empty of inherent existence. When you understand emptiness through the reasoning of dependent arising, you realize that all phenomena are unions of dependent arising and emptiness. Appearance and emptiness are perceived as harmonious. Dependently arisen appearances of conventional phenomena provide the context for teaching compassion called the vast path, as there is such a huge variety of appearances. The emptiness of the inherent existence of appearances provides the basis for teaching what is known as the profound path, because emptiness is thefanal naturia phenomena, peaceful, free from conceptualizations, and of one taste. Through meditatively cultivating these two paths, the vast aspect of compassion and the profound wisdom of emptiness in an inseparable way, faulty states of mind in your continuum undergo gradual transformation. They are gradually removed, and the excellent attributes of a Buddha's mind and body emerge. Buddhahood is achieved through the unified cultivation of both motivation and wisdom. However, motivation and wisdom have their own respective imprints on Buddhahood. The result of cultivating motivation is the form bodies of a Buddha, which exist for the sake of fulfilling the well-being of others. The imprint of cultivating wisdom is the truth body of a Buddha, which is the fulfillment of your own development. What are the main forms of motivation and wisdom? The primary motivation is another directed intention to become enlightened, inspired by love and compassion and inspiring the practice of compassionate deeds such as giving, morality, and patience. The main form of wisdom is an intelligent consciousness realizing the emptiness of inherent existence. The foundations of Buddhism have three aspects. Thebasisis, the two truths, conventional and ultimate. From these two truths the path emerges with the twin factors of motivation and wisdom, each related to its respective truth. The fruit or result of travel on the path is actualization of the two bodies, the form bodies and truth body of a Buddha. To bring this all together, on the basis of the two truths conventional and ultimate, you practice the two qualities of thepath, motivation and wisdom, which leads you to achieve the fruit, the form and truth bodies of a Buddha. Summary for daily practice. Identify the luminous and knowing nature of the mind, unclouded by thoughts. Probe the deeper nature of the mind again and again, to reveal its absence of inherent existence, its emptiness, by reflecting on the mind's dependence on causes and conditions and dependence on parts, including the fact that any length of time that passes in the mind depends on earlier and later parts of that time period. Try to realize the compatibility of the appearance of the mind with its emptiness of inherent existence. See how these two mutually support each other. Part 11. Deity Yoga. In Buddhism there are basically two types of practices, Sutra and Tantra. So far we have been discussing Sutra practice. The special purpose of Tantra is to provide a faster path so that qualified practitioners can be of service to others more quickly. In Tantra, the power of imagination is harnessed to meditation in a practice called Deity Yoga. In this practice you imagine one, replacing your mind as it ordinarily appears, full of troubling emotions, with a mind of pure wisdom motivated by compassion. 2. Substituting your body as it ordinarily appears, composed of flesh, blood, and bone, with a body fashioned from compassionately motivated wisdom. 3. Developing a sense of a pure self that depends on purely appearing mind and body in an ideal environment, fully engaged in helping others. As this distinctive practice of Tantra calls for visualizing yourself with a Buddha's body, activities, resources, and surroundings, it is called taking imagination as the spiritual path. Let us consider a qualm about this practice. You are considering yourself to have Buddha qualities which you presently do not have. Is this, then, a correct type of meditative consciousness? Yes. Your mind is involved in understanding reality, out of which you are appearing as a deity. Therefore, your mind, from this viewpoint, is correct. Also, you are purposely imagining yourself as having a divine body, even if you do not presently possess one. This is an imaginative meditation. You are not convinced from the depths that you actually have pure mind, body, and selfhood. Rather, based in clear imagination of ideal body and mind, you are cultivating the sense of being a deity, compassionately helping others. To be a special trainee of Tantra, that is to say, the kind of trainee for whom Buddha specifically set forth the practice of Tantra, a practitioner must have sharp faculties and have already attained stable wisdom realizing emptiness, or be ready for speedy activation of this wisdom. The requirements for just practicing Tantra are less rigorous. Still, to engage in Tantra at any level demands a powerful intention to become enlightened for the sake of others and a feeling that this needs to be done very quickly. At the beginning of Tantric practice, the basic way to develop calm abiding is to meditate on your own body, as if it were that of a deity. When you meditate on a divine body, first you meditate on emptiness, gaining as much awareness of the emptiness of inherent existence as you can. When you have acclimated to this state, you use that very mind itself as the basis out of which the deity appears. The mind, realizing emptiness, appears as the deity in his or her surroundings. First you meditate on emptiness, out of that the deity appears, then you concentrate on the deity. In this way, deity yoga combines wisdom and compassionate motivation. A single consciousness realizes emptiness and also appears compassionately in the form of an altruistic deity. In the sutra system, although there is a union of wisdom and compassionate motivation, the practice of wisdom is in the affected the force of the practice of motivation, and the practice of motivation is in the affected the force of the practice of wisdom. They are not contained within one consciousness. A distinguishing feature of Tantra is that they are. Inclusion of motivation and wisdom within one consciousness is what makes Tantra's progress so swift. When I was a young boy, Tantra was just a matter of blind faith. At age 24 I lost my own country, and then after coming to India started really reading Tsongkhapa's explanations on emptiness. Then, after moving to Dharamsala, I put more effort into the study and practice of the stages of the path, emptiness, and Tantra. So it was only in my late 20s, after gaining some experience of emptiness, that deity yoga made sense. One time in the main temple in Dharamsala I was performing the ritual of imagining myself as a deity of highest yoga tantra, called Guhya Samaja. My mind continuously remained on the recitation of the ritual text, and when the words I myself came, I completely forgot about my usual self in relation to my combination of mind and body. Instead, I had a very clear sense of I in relation to the new pure combination of mind and body of Guhya Samaja that I was imagining. Since this is the type of self-identification that is at the heart of Tantric Yoga, the experience confirmed for me that with enough time, I could definitely achieve the extraordinary deep states mentioned in the scriptures. Initiation. To practice Tantra, it is especially important to gain access to the transmission of blessings from previous great beings. Blessings also exist in sutra practice, but they are crucial in Tantra. The first means of entry to these blessings is through the door of initiation. There are 4 classes of Tantra's action, performance, yoga, and highest yoga Tantra, each with its own initiations to ripen the mind for practice, and each with its own meditations. Where do you receive initiation? In a mandala, comprised of ideal surroundings and divine residence, which all are manifestations of compassion and wisdom. There are mandalas of varying complexity for all 4 tantras. Some are painted, others are constructed from colored sands, and still others comprise a special class of concentration mandalas. In order to receive initiation and to take vows in a mandala of Yoga Tantra or highest Yoga Tantra, the Lama conducting the ceremony must have the full complement of qualifications. All 4 sets of tantras place special emphasis on the attributes of the Lama, in keeping with Buddha's detailed descriptions of teachers' qualifications for the various stages of the path. Remember also Buddha's admonition to rely not just on the person, but on the doctrine. You should not be overwhelmed by a teacher's reputation. Most important, the teacher must know the doctrine, the practices, well, pledges and vows. In the 2 lower Tantra sets, action and performance, there is no clear indication that tantric vows must be taken upon initiation. Nevertheless, there are many pledges to be kept. In the two higher Tantra sets, Yoga and Highest Yoga, after receiving initiation with all of its facets, you must take tantric vows in addition to pledges. Yoga Tantra and Highest Yoga Tantra have 14 basic vows as well as lists of infractions to guard against, but as they differ in their respective paths, even the basic vows differ slightly. Since the practice of Tantra is mainly concerned with overcoming the appearance of yourself and your surroundings as ordinary, in order to overcome the conception of these as ordinary, you visualize yourself to have a Buddha's body, compassionate activities, resources, and abode. Therefore, most of the pledges are concerned with substituting ideal for ordinary appearances and restraining your own estimation of yourself, your companions, your environment, and your activities as being ordinary. Except for the particular vow of individual liberation that lasts for just 24 hours, all of the other vows of individual liberation are taken for an entire lifetime, although it is possible to rescind one's vows and give back one's ordination. By contrast, bodhisattva and tantric vows extend right through to the time of highest enlightenment, as long as one has not committed a root infraction. First one assumes the morality of individual liberation, then bodhisattva morality, and finally tantric morality. Householders who take the bodhisattva and tantric vows keep a householder's version of the vows of individual liberation. The Kalachakra Tantra, which flourished during the 11th century in India and became a principal tantra of the new translation schools in Tibet, states that if there are 3 teachers of Tantra, one with householder's vows, another with vows of a novice monastic, and a third with the vows of a full-fledged monastic, the person who has taken the vows of a full-fledged monastic should be considered higher than the others. This indicates the high estimation that even this tantric system places on the monastic morality. Thiguya Samaja Tantra says that externally you should keep the discipline of the practice of individual liberation and internally maintain an affinity for the practice of Tantra. In these ways the practice of Sutra and Tantra work together, using sex in that path. Let us begin to consider the role of sexual desire in the path and Tantra by looking at the prohibition against sexual misconduct in the morality of individual liberation, which is entirely based on the principle of refraining from harm. Specific sexual misconduct is identified in detail in Vasubandhu Strisari of Manifest Knowledge. For a male it would be to cohabit with someone else's wife or with someone who is under the care of her family. For a female it is the same. It is prohibited to cohabit with someone else's husband or with someone who is under the care of his family. Some have suggested, ridiculously, that since Vasubandhu's text explains the 10 non-virtues from the viewpoint of a male, there is no fault if a female engages in the non-virtues, and thus there are no prohibitions for a female. For Buddhists, sexual intercourse can be used in the spiritual path because it causes a strong focusing of consciousness if the practitioner has firm compassion and wisdom. Its purpose is to manifest and prolong the deeper levels of mind described earlier with respect to the process of dying, in order to put their power to use in strengthening the realization of emptiness. Otherwise, mere intercourse has nothing to do with spiritual cultivation. When a person has achieved a high level of practice in motivation and wisdom, then even the joining of the 2 sex organs, or so-called intercourse, does not detract from the maintenance of that person's pure behavior. Yogis who have achieved a high level of the path and are fully qualified can engage in sexual activity, and a monastic with this ability can maintain all the precepts. One Tibetan yogi adept, when criticized by another, said that he ate meat and drank beer as offerings to the mandala deity. Such tantric practitioners visualize themselves as deities in a complete mandala, within realization that the ultimate deity is the ultimate bliss, the union of bliss and emptiness. He also said that his sexual practice with a consort was undertaken for the sake of developing real knowledge, and that indeed is the purpose. Such a practitioner can make spiritual use not only of delicious meat and drink, but even of human excrement and urine. A yogi's meditation transforms these into real ambrosia. For people like us, however, this is beyond our reach. As long as you cannot transform piss and shit, these other things should not be done. Buddha set out a specific series of stages on the path precisely for this reason. The preliminary stage is training in the vows of individual liberation. If you live as a monk or nun, your conduct has a more sound basis. There is little danger of excessive distraction. Even if you cannot fully implement such vows, there is not much risk. Then simply practice, practice, practice. Once you develop inner strength, you can control the four internal elements: earth, water, fire, and wind, or five elements, if inner space is included. Once you can fully control these internal elements, then you can control the outer five elements. Then you can make use of anything. How does sexual intercourse help in the path? There are many different levels of consciousness. The potential of grosser levels is very limited, but the deeper, more subtle levels are much more powerful. We need to access these subtler levels of mind. But in order to do so, we need to weaken and temporarily stop grosser consciousness. To accomplish this, it is necessary to bring about dramatic changes in the flow of inner energies. Even though brief versions of the deeper levels of mind occur during sneezing and yawning, they obviously cannot be prolonged. Also, previous experience with manifesting the deeper levels is required to make use of their occurrence in deep sleep. This is where sex comes in. Through special techniques of concentration during sex, competent practitioners can prolong very deep, subtle, and powerful states and put them to use to realize emptiness. However, if you engage in sexual intercourse within an ordinary mental context, there is no benefit. A Buddha has no use for sexual intercourse. Deities depicted in a mandala are often in union with a consort, but this does not suggest that Buddhas have to rely on sexual intercourse for their bliss. Buddhas have full bliss within themselves. Deities in union spontaneously appear in mandalas for the benefit of people with very sharp faculties who can make use of a consort and the bliss of sexual union in practicing the quick path of Tantra. In much the same way, the Tantric Buddha Vajradhara appears in peaceful aspects and wrathful aspects, but this does not mean that Vajradhara has these two aspects to his personality. Vajradhara is always totally compassionate. Rather, his spontaneous appearance in various ways is for the sake of trainees. Vajradhara appears in just the way that the trainee should meditate when using afflictive emotions, such as lust or hatred in the process of the path. To corral such powerful emotions into the spiritual path, trainees cannot be imagining that they have the peaceful body of Shakyamuni Buddha. Deity yoga is required. Since in the case of hatred, for instance, it is necessary to meditate on your own body in a fierce form, Vajradhara automatically appears in the appropriate ferocious form to show the trainee how to meditate. The same is true for sexual yoga. Trainees who are capable of using the bliss arising from the desire involved in gazing, smiling, holding hands, or union must perform the appropriate deity yoga. They could not be imagining themselves as Shakyamuni, a monk. The purpose of Vajradhara's various appearances is neither to scare the trainees, nor to excite desire in them, but to show how to do imaginative meditation in those forms in order eventually to overcome afflictive emotions. A Buddha is capable of appearing spontaneously without exertion in whatever way is appropriate. The form of these appearances is shaped by the needs of others, not for the sake of that Buddha. From a Buddha's own point of view, that Buddha has the total self-fulfillment of the truth body, in which he or she remains forever. Remember, the tantric morality is built on the morality of individual liberation and on the morality of compassion. The aim of Tantra is to achieve Buddhahood on a faster path in order to be of service to others more quickly. Summary for daily practice. Since the practice of Tantra is primarily to transform how you see yourself, others, the environment, and your activities, it can be helpful to visualize yourself as having a compassionate motivation, a pure body, and conduct that benefits others. Part 12. Overview of the path to enlightenment. Gradual progress. How does a practitioner gradually proceed to Buddhahood through meditatively cultivating the paths of motivation and wisdom? In the Heart Sutra, Buddha expresses the levels of the path in a short, profound statement: Tadyata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha, pronounced Tadyata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha, which means, it is thus, proceed beyond, thoroughly proceed beyond, be founded in enlightenment. Let us examine this more closely, starting with the first word, gate. Proceed or go. Who is proceeding? It is the higher self that is designated in dependence upon the continuum of the mind. From what are you proceeding? You are moving away from cyclic existence, that state of being under the influence of contaminated actions and counterproductive emotions. To what are you proceeding? You are proceeding to Buddhahood endowed with a truth body, forever free of suffering and the sources of suffering, afflictive emotions, as well as the predispositions established by afflictive emotions. Upon what causes and conditions do you depend as you proceed? You are proceeding in dependence on a path that is a union of compassion and wisdom. Buddha is telling trainees to go to the other shore. From the viewpoint of the trainee, cyclic existence is on the near side, it is close at hand. On the far shore, a distant place, is nirvana, the state of having passed beyond suffering. The Fivapaths. When Buddha says Tadyata gate gate paragate parasamgata bodhisvaha, it is thus, proceed beyond, thoroughly proceed beyond, be founded in enlightenment. He is telling trainees to proceed over the 5 paths: gate, the path of accumulation; gate, the path of preparation; paragate, the path of seeing; parasamgate, the path of meditation; bodhi, the path of no more learning. Let us identify the nature of spiritual advancement over these 5 paths. What is the initial path? That path of accumulation. It is that period when you mainly practice other-directed motivation and thereby accumulate great stores of merit. Also, although you are practicing a union of motivation and wisdom, your realization of emptiness has not reached the level of mutually supportive stabilizing meditation, an analytical meditation called a state arisen from meditation. On this path you achieve powerfully concentrated meditation and are working toward a state arisen from meditation realizing emptiness. At the point at which you achieve a state of wisdom arisen from meditation realizing emptiness, you pass to the path of preparation. By becoming more and more familiar with this state, together with cultivating compassionate motivation, you gradually perceive the appearance of emptiness more clearly over the 4 levels of the path of preparation: heat, peak, forbearance, and highest mundane qualities. Eventually emptiness is realized directly, without even subtle contamination from dualistic appearance, which has vanished. This is the beginning of the path of seeing, the path of initial direct realization of the truth concerning the deep nature of phenomena. At this point in the great vehicle, the 10 bodhisattva levels, called grounds because on them special spiritual qualities are engendered, begin. During the path of seeing and path of meditation, 2 types of obstructions, intellectually acquired and innate, are respectively overcome. Intellectually acquired states of mind come about through adherence to false systems, For example, there are followers of some Buddhist schools who believe that phenomena conventionally exist by way of their own character, based on the UNFOUNDED reasoning that, if phenomena were not established in this way, they could not function. This kind of misconception, polluted by an invalid system of tenets, is called artificial or intellectually acquired. Even if you have acquired no new predispositions through wrong conceptual thinking in this lifetime, everyone has in their mental continuum predispositions established by adhering to wrong views in former lifetimes. By contrast, innate faulty states of mind have existed in all sentient beings from insects to humans since beginningless time, and operate of their own accord without depending on faulty scripture and reasoning. Intellectually acquired, or artificial, obstructions are removed through the path of seeing, whereas innate obstructions are more difficult to overcome, because you have been conditioned to these faulty states of mind since beginningless time. They must be removed by continued meditation on the meaning of emptiness. Because such meditation must take place repeatedly over a long period of time, this phase of the path is called the path of meditation. Indeed, you have meditated on emptiness earlier, but the path of meditation refers to a path of extended familiarization. On this level you pass through the remaining 9 bodhisattva grounds. From among the 10 grounds, the first 7 are called impure, the last 3 are called pure. This is because on the first 7 grounds you are still in process of removing afflictive obstructions, and thus these 7 are not yet purified. Through the first part of the 8th ground you are removing afflictive emotions. The balance of the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds enable you to overcome the obstructions to omniscience. Now, through using the diamond-like concentrated meditation achieved at the end of the 10 bodhisattva grounds, the culmination of still having obstructions yet to be overcome, you can effectively undermine the very subtle obstacles to omniscience. The very next moment of your mind becomes an omniscient consciousness, and simultaneously the deep nature of the mind becomes the nature body of a Buddha. This is the 5th and final path, that path of no more learning. From the very subtle wind, or energy which is one entity with that mind, various pure and impure physical forms spontaneously spring forth to assist sentient beings. These are called the form bodies of a Buddha. This is Buddhahood, a state of being, a source of help and happiness for all sentient beings. Let me take a moment here to address the many misconceptions about whether or not women can attain Buddhahood. In the Sutra Great Vehicle, there is no indication that a woman cannot achieve Buddhahood. However, the texts state that, during the practices for accumulating merit over 3 periods of countless great eons, you will arrive at a time when the karma you are working at will mature as the physical marks and beauties of a Buddha. At this time, according to the Sutra Great Vehicle, it helps to have strong physical support, so you naturally come to have the body of a male. Those texts also say that in the final lifetime before you achieve Buddhahood, you need to have the body of a male. However, highest Yoga Tantra, which we consider to be the final system, says that not only can a woman achieve Buddhahood, but she can do so right in this lifetime. Qualities of Buddhahood. In all forms of Buddhism, practice is based on the intention to leave cyclic existence. Additionally, in the Great Vehicle you are motivated by the other concerned intention to become enlightened. In Tantra, through techniques that enhance the development of the concentrated meditation, which is the union of calm abiding and special insight, you can achieve the state of Buddhahood in which all obstructions, the afflictive obstructions preventing liberation from cyclic existence, and the obstructions to omniscience preventing Buddhahood have been removed. A Buddha's qualities are described as different bodies which can be divided into 2 general types. The truth body, for the fulfillment of your own welfare. The form bodies, for the fulfillment of others' welfare. Form bodies, in turn, can be divided by how they appear to beings on different levels of purity and impurity. Highly advanced trainees can access the complete enjoyment body. Other levels of trainees experience a wide variety of emanation bodies. The truth body can also be divided into two types, the nature body and the exalted wisdom body. The nature body can be further subdivided into a state of natural purification and a state of purification of adventitious or caused defilements. The exalted wisdom truth body can be further divided according to many different viewpoints. Maitreya's ornament for clear realization specifies 21 sets of uncontaminated exalted wisdoms which can be subdivided into 146 sets. Practicing for Thelingol. This has been a brief explanation of the ground, the two truths, conventional and ultimate, the paths built on that ground, motivation and wisdom, the fruits of the paths, the form bodies and truth body of a Buddha. It is helpful to have this overview of the structure of practice, but you need to remember that realization is generated through many causes and conditions: proper understanding, accumulation of merit, and overcoming of obstructions. If you have not first accumulated merit and purified ill deeds, it is difficult to gain realization just from trying to meditate. Therefore, it is important to work through each of the prerequisites. Engagement in the prerequisites is not just a matter of filling some sort of count or even of completing retreat for 3 years and 3 phases of the moon, as some might imagine from the fact that many retreats take this long or for any other period of time. Instead, you must accumulate merit and purify obstructions until certain realizations are generated. You may spend your entire lifetime doing so, with the goal of improving future lives. Sometimes, because of a lack of knowledge, people who perform long retreats end up with considerable pride about the mere fact that they finished a retreat. The increase in pride yields an increase in anger, jealousy, and competitiveness. The same can happen with mere book knowledge of doctrine. It is not easy. Afflictive emotions are tricky. Practice is not something you do for a couple of weeks or a couple of years. It takes place over many lifetimes, for eons and eons. As we have seen, some texts say enlightenment is achieved after accumulating the collections of merit and wisdom for 3 periods of countless great eons. If you consider this statement properly, it can encourage you to adopt a patient, persistent attitude through difficult circumstances. If learning this saddens you, this could be due to your desire to achieve Buddhahood swiftly out of your great concern for others. It could also be a sign of insufficient courage. Enlightenment cannot be attained without working hard at it. To believe otherwise means you are harboring some form of selfishness. This is the entire process of the path. Even though Tibetans might not have wealth that can be kept in a wallet, they have this wealth that is kept in the mind. The stated good intentions of the various religions are not sufficient. We must implement them in daily life and society. Then we can know the real value of their teachings. If a Buddhist, for instance, meditates in a temple, but outside the temple does not enact those contemplative ideals, that is not good. We must practice in daily life. The real value of practice is seen when we face a difficult period. When we are happy and everything goes smoothly, then practice seems not so urgent. But when we face unavoidable problems such as sickness, old age, death, or other desperate situations, it becomes crucial to control your anger, to control your emotional feelings, and to use your good human mind to determine how to face that problem with patience and calm. If we practice this way, our first hope is that we may overcome the problem, but if not, at least the problem cannot disturb your mental peace. That is good, is it not? You are facing the situation and retaining your peace of mind without taking drugs or trying to pull your thoughts away from it. That is why we take such great interest in our weekends and vacations. 5 days a week you are very busy, working hard to make money, then on the weekend you go to some remote place with that money and have a nice time. This means you are trying to take your mind off your problem, but the problem is still there. However, if you have a good mental attitude, it is not necessary to divert yourself. When you can face the situation and analyze the problem, then, like a big piece of ice in the water, it will gradually melt away. If you practice sincerely, you will experience its real value. According to Buddha's own word, his teaching will last here for 5,000 years. At the end of that 5,000 years it will finally be destroyed by someone who is a reincarnation of Buddha himself, since when that day comes there will be no further value in the teaching. However, there are a billion world systems like ours, with limitless billions of those. In some of them the teaching is newly being introduced, in some it is waning. The teaching continually remains somewhere at all times. The Buddhas never disappear, and the teaching never vanishes. Summaries for daily practice. Here in one place are the summaries for practice gathered from throughout the book. Focus on one suitable for your level at this point, or you could alternate among them over the course of a week. Cultivated patiently over time, the practices will become more and more familiar, and your life will become more meaningful. Morality of individual liberation. Examine your motivation as often as you can. Even before getting out of bed in the morning, establish a non-violent, non-abusive outlook for your day. At night examine what you did during the day. Notice how much suffering there is in your own life. There is physical and mental pain which you naturally seek to avoid, such as sickness, aging, and death. There are temporary experiences, like eating good food, that seem to be pleasurable in and of themselves, but, if partaken continuously, turn into pain. This is the suffering of change. When a situation switches from pleasure to pain, reflect on the fact that the deeper nature of the original pleasure is revealing itself. Attachment to such superficial pleasures will only bring more pain. Reflect on how you are caught in a general process of conditioning that, rather than being under your control, is under the influence of karma and afflictive emotions. Gradually develop a realistic view of the body through examining its constituents: skin, blood, flesh, bone, and so forth. Analyze your life closely. You will eventually find it difficult to misuse it by becoming machine-like, or by merely seeking money as a surrogate for happiness. Adopt a positive attitude in the face of difficulty. Imagine that by undergoing a difficult situation you are also undermining worse consequences from other karmas that you would otherwise have to experience in the future. As a mental exercise, take upon yourself the burden of everyone's suffering of that type. Evaluate the possible negative and positive effects of feelings such as lust, anger, jealousy, and hatred. When it becomes obvious that their effects are harmful, you will have arrived at the conclusion that there are no positive results of, say, anger. Analyze more and more, and gradually your conviction will strengthen. Repeated reflection on the disadvantages of anger will cause you to realize that it is senseless and even pathetic. This decision will cause your anger gradually to diminish. Having recognized the scope of suffering, research its cause and identify that the source of suffering is ignorance of the true nature of persons and things, and that lust, hatred, and so forth are based on this ignorance. Realize that suffering can be removed, can be extinguished into the sphere of reality. Reflect that this true cessation is attained through the practice of morality, concentrated meditation, and wisdom true paths. Notice your attachments to food, clothes, and shelter, and adapt monastic practices of contentment to a layperson's life. Be satisfied with adequate food, clothing, and shelter. Use the additional free time for meditation so that you can overcome more problems. Develop a strong wish to refrain from harming others, either physically or verbally, no matter whether you are embarrassed, insulted, reviled, pushed, or hit. Morality of concern for others. Perform the 5-step visualization for developing compassion. Remain calm and reasonable. In front of you to the right, imagine another version of yourself, egotistical and self-centered. In front of you to the left, imagine a group of poor people, suffering beings who are unrelated to you, neither friend nor enemy. Observe these two sides from your calm vantage point. Now think, both want happiness. Both want to get rid of suffering. Both have the right to accomplish these goals. Consider this, just as usually we are willing to make temporary sacrifices for a greater long-term good, so the benefit of the larger number of suffering beings to your left is much more important than this single egotistical person on your right. Notice your mind naturally turning to the side of the greater number of people. Perform the ritual for the aspiration to enlightenment. First, take the 7 preliminary steps. Make Hamajetto Shakyamuni Buddha surrounded by innumerable bodhisattvas, whom you imagine filling the sky in front of you. Awful wonderful things whether you own them or not, including your body, your resources, and your own virtue, to the Buddhas and bodhisattvas. Discless of countless ill deeds of body, speech, and mind you have perpetrated with an intent to harm others, regret having done them, and intend to abstain from them in the future. Admire from the depths of the heart your own virtues and those of others. Take joy in the good things you have done in this and previous lives, thinking, I really did something good. Take joy in the virtues of others, including those of Buddhas and bodhisattvas. Entreath Buddhas who have become completely enlightened, but have not yet taught, to teach for the sake of those who suffer. Supplicate the Buddhas not to pass away. Dedicate these 6 practices to attaining highest enlightenment. Then undertake the central part of the ritual for aspiring to enlightenment, with a strong determination to attain Buddhahood in order to serve other beings. Imagine a Buddha in front of you, or your spiritual teacher as a representative of Buddha. Recite 3 times, as if you are repeating after him or her, until I reach enlightenment I seek refuge in Buddha, the doctrine, and the supreme spiritual community. Through the collections of merit of my giving morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all beings. To maintain and strengthen this profound altruism in this life, perform the following. Recall again and again the benefits of developing an intention to become enlightened for the sake of others. Divide the day into 3 periods, and the night into 3 periods, and during each of those periods, take a little time out, or rouse yourself from sleep and practice the 5-step visualization given earlier. It is also sufficient to visualize the 5 steps 3 times in one morning session that lasts around 15 minutes, and 3 times in one night session for 15 minutes. Avoid mentally neglecting the welfare of even one being. As much as possible, engage in virtuous activity with a good attitude and develop a rough understanding of the nature of reality, or maintain a wish to do so and work at it. To maintain and strengthen this profound altruism in future lives, do not lie to anyone at all, unless you can help others greatly through lying. Directly or indirectly help people to progress toward enlightenment. Treat all beings with respect. Never cheat anyone, and always remain honest. In essence, think again and again, may I become able to help all beings. Concentrated meditation. Choose an object of meditation and focus your mind on it, trying to achieve and maintain stability, clarity, and intensity. Avoid laxity and excitement. Alternatively, identify the fundamental state of the mind unsullied by thought, just in its own state, mere luminosity, the knowing nature of the mind. With mindfulness and introspection, remain in that state. If a thought arises, just look into the very nature of that thought itself. This will cause it to lose its power and dissolve of its own accord. Wisdom. As an exercise in identifying how objects and beings falsely appear in perception, try the following. Observe how an item such as a watch appears in a store when you first notice it, then how its appearance changes and becomes even more concrete as your interest grows, and finally how it appears after you have bought it and consider it yours. Notice at various times how you yourself appear to your mind as if existent in and of yourself without depending on mind and body. Then, frequently reflect on how phenomena arise in dependence on causes and conditions, and observe how this contradicts the way people and things appear to exist in their own right, to exist inherently. If you tend toward nihilism, reflect more on dependent arising. If, by concentrating on causes and conditions, you tend to reinforce the inherent existence of phenomena, put more emphasis on how dependence contradicts this so solid appearance, you will probably be pulled from one side to the other. The true middle way takes time to find. Also, identify the luminous and knowing nature of the mind, unclouded by thoughts, and without any conceptual overlay. Probe the deeper nature of the mind repeatedly to reveal its absence of inherent existence, its emptiness. Reflect on the mind's dependence on causes, conditions, and parts. For the mind, any length of time of the mind, whether 1 minute or the shortest moment, depends on earlier and later parts of that time period. Try to realize the compatibility of the appearance of the mind with its emptiness of inherent existence. See how these two mutually support each other. Tantra. Since the practice of Tantra is primarily to transform how you see yourself, others, and the environment, it can be helpful to visualize yourself as having a compassionate motivation, pure body, and activities benefiting others. Though my own knowledge is limited and my experience is also very poor, I have tried my best to help you understand the full breadth of the Buddha's teaching. Please implement whatever in these pages appears to be helpful. If you follow another religion, please adopt whatever might assist you. If you do not think it would be helpful, just leave it alone. And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.